Thank you, Angela.
Yeah, okay. Welcome to the 2021 virtual CCL Northeast Regional Conference. And to start, I love this reminder of what we're about. So Devin, take it away. Okay. So yes, we're about making democracy work to solve climate change in the most effective and equitable way possible. We have regional conferences every year to connect, learn new tools, recharge, and strategize. And here we are. And wow, how different is this from last year at Troy? I don't know who else was there, but lots of you. We weren't hugging, but at least we were being together. And what a year it's been. But we've adapted. Here we are on Zoom, just like everybody else has been all year long, watching cattails and children drift through our calls and learning all the Zoom tricks. And you haven't stopped making things happen in Washington. So here is an example of our growing clout. 3 of the supporting asks that CCL lobbied for last year made it into legislation. So Devin, show us. Okay. So we will miss the face-to-face connections, I know, but we've continued to meet with and keep up relationship with our members of Congress. We've found ways to give hundreds of video presentations, written hundreds of letters to the editor, been tweeting and Instagramming, and having chapter meetings and conferences, all virtually and on Zoom, and we're still going strong. And that is a good thing, because the new political climate in Washington is the best it's been in 10 years for truly significant climate action at last. The unbroken commitment and energy I'm feeling from all of you is a constant source of joy and wonder to me. It's just amazing. We have not let COVID slow us down. And so this weekend, so we're here. Almost 500 people have registered for this conference, which is unbelievable. We come from all 7 states of the region: Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, New York, Rhode Island, and Vermont. And just what does our region look like for CCL? Well, we have 20,000 supporters in the region. We have 48 House districts, 14 senators. So that means there's 62 members of Congress that we're working on building and maintaining relationships with. Some of them are incredibly key, like Susan Collins of Maine, and she's our sole Republican senator, but boy, is she key to our prospects. Also, newly key to our prospects is Senator Chuck Schumer, the new state majority leader, incredibly powerful. And in the House, we have 12 co-sponsors of the Energy Innovation Act, a quarter of our House members, and we hope they will all rejoin when the new bill is introduced. We have lots of leaders of congressional committees, including the committees of jurisdiction that for bills like the Energy Innovation Act. We have 8 Republican House representatives as well, all from New York State at the moment. So there's lots of possibilities to move things forward in the region. So before we go on to the first session, let's do some housekeeping. let's create our name tags. So can all of you please rename yourselves in Zoom? You can either hover over your little square of the top right and click on rename, or you could click on participants at the bottom and hover over your name. I'll give you a second to find that. And once you're there, what I'd like you to put down in your name is your first and last name, your town, the initials of your state, and your preferred pronouns. And I'll give you a minute to do that, and you'll click OK when you're done. Okay, so I'm assuming that that's happened since I can't see everybody. So what's going to be happening this weekend to help us move the ball forward and get climate legislation passed? First, we start with energy in the future. We are going to start the conference with a wondrous panel of high school students who have found their voice and their strength to build a livable world. Action is their middle name. They're running CCL chapters, they're lobbying state and town officials, they're lobbying members of Congress, they're organizing activists. They are beyond inspiring, and we are excited and honored to have them all with us. So we'll see them in a little bit. After that, we will hear the brilliant climate scientist and advocate, Dr. Kathryn Gage, who always helps us find a way to bridge the divides that we inevitably encounter in this work. Dr. Danny Richter will be on. He runs our DC office, and he's going to give us the latest on what they're hearing down there on climate legislation and give us early clues on how that might impact our work. It's always great to hear Danny. After that, you're going to get to pick from 4 fabulous breakout sessions and to deepen your understanding and effectiveness in your CCL work. One is an advanced climate policy session by Dr. Ross Astoria, who's an expert on the administrative side. And it's very valuable given the change in administration for us to see what is possible now to complement legislative policies from the administrative side. So he's going to do that. Paige Dedrick is going to show us how to gain strength from working with progressive allies, which again, very, very key to getting support for effective action. Jean Rytalk will show us how to strengthen our chapters simply by asking for help more effectively. And Noah Dalzell and Jonah Kerman-Farber from Climate Exchange, they're going to give us the latest on climate action and carbon pricing in the Northeast states and the region. So those 4 will happen after the Kathryn Gage and Danny session. All that information is on the slide. Do you have that slide up?
Yep, slide's up.
Okay, so that's, you can, basically the cclusa.org, any program, you will get all the information on those sessions. After those sessions, as always, we're going to gather within our states. So to reconnect with old friends, process what we've learned today, and focus on next steps. That's always a great part of any conference. So at 5 o'clock, we're going to have a break. We'll stretch our legs, go get some dinner, do what you do, your stuff, and come back and party with each other virtually. So we're going to have a virtual happy hour lined up at 7:30 with hosts to keep things lively, including a demonstration of a climate Kahoot game. And the happy hour comes complete with a shopping list that's ours to keep so that we can always know which beers and wines come from CCL endorsers. But in any case, bring along a glass of beer, a glass of wine, or a snack, and just be ready to hang out and have a little fun with each other from 7:30 to 9. But also, importantly, at 7:30, we're going to have a book discussion in a separate session on the beautiful book of essays called All We Can Save. It is, there'll be more on that in the on the app, but it's a beautiful book. This session will be run by Sean Daig, who's wonderful, and that should be a very special evening session as well. So looking to tomorrow, we're going to have a choice of the terrific Braver Angels workshop on crossing the divide. And that's a deep and thoughtful way of connecting meaningfully and effectively with those we disagree with. I highly recommend it. I've taken it. It's really, really good. And it's different from if you took a Braver Angels workshop last spring and summer, this is a new one. So at the same time, Peter Dugas of Maine is going to demonstrate how to weave the powerful inroads tool into your regular CCL presentations. That should be really very helpful. We had a third workshop lined up, and we're very sorry that it had to be canceled. It was on the role of culture and unconscious bias. It was part of our conference, but the speaker, Pamela Benson Owens, is a Texan. You've read about last week's devastating storm in Texas. Well, it made the technology impossible for that workshop to happen tomorrow. So it's going to be postponed. It'll happen, but it'll be postponed into March. So thank you so much for the volunteers who have worked so hard to make this conference happen. Karen and Bruce Frischkopf, Rob Bonney, Ann Schmidt, Scott Loveland. You've all been amazing. All the tech volunteers, we have dozens of tech volunteers putting these sessions together. You're all the best. And the speakers, thank you so much to bring your expertise to us. Oh, my throat's drying out. Sorry. So go forth, explore our offerings today and tomorrow, learn a lot, make Zoom connections, and have a great conference. So it's time to bring out our kick-ass high school panel. So I'm going to get out of the way and in they'll come.
Thank you so much. Hi everyone, I'm Mercury. You'll hear more from me in a little bit. For now, I'd like to start with a quick round of introductions from our panelists, starting with Alice. Alice, take it away.
Thank you, Mercury. Hi, I'm Alice. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm currently a sophomore at Phillips Academy, Andover in Andover, Mass. I'm a field representative for Our Climate, which is an organization that's national, nonprofit, and it primarily focuses on state level climate policy. I also helped to co-found Spring Forward, which is a youth-led climate educational initiative that educates and empowers elementary and middle school students about climate change and environmental justice. And finally, this past January, I helped to organize a 140 plus person lobby week for transparency in the Massachusetts State House. It's probably one of my favorite climate actions that I've ever done because it was cool empowering my classmates around me and also learning a lot about communication, balance, activism, and working together with my peers.
Thank you so much, Alice. Danielle, would you like to go next?
Hello, everyone. I'm Danielle. I'm 17. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a high school senior from Maine, Cheverus High School to be specific. Here is a brief blurb over how I got involved with CCL. After stumbling across CCL at a social justice street fair one hot June afternoon, then months later, from the 10th to the 13th of November 2019, a month after my 16th birthday, I experienced a taste of what it means to care for the earth, our shared home generally. For 4 days in Washington, D.C., I joined a lively community of climate change activists while also attending the November lobbying days. I learned, mingled, grew, and most importantly, I acknowledged the power of youth that surrounded me. From all across the country, east to west, north to south, I met young people excited and determined to move mountains. After that amazing experience, I was rejuvenated. So I came back home and I knew I wanted to get more involved. Today, I serve as the Portland Youth Education Intern for my CCL chapter, and I'm dedicated to engaging my community through presentations, facilitating conversations, social media outreach, and simply spreading the word. I am more than grateful to be here, and I've also done several other projects with the integration between mental health and climate change. So thank you so much for having me, and I'll pass it back to Mercury.
Thank you so much, Danielle. Kathryn, take it away.
Hi everyone, I'm Kathryn Gage. I'm 17 and I'm a senior from New Hampshire. And in case anyone's wondering, I don't know where I'm going to college yet, still waiting for responses. And I apologize for my background. I'm about to go to a Nordic ski race right after this. And thank you to the Hubermans, who are amazing CCL volunteers, for the use of your Wi-Fi. So I joined CCL when I was in 8th grade. I heard about it through my dad, who was looking for ways to help with climate change and thought CCL had a great idea. So I started going to things with him, and I lobbied in DC and went to CCL's conference and have been going to those ever since, which has been an amazing experience. And I also started attending the local chapter meetings, and I had some ideas for what to do in the meetings because I wanted to spend less time talking and more time playing games and taking action. So I started leading the local chapter meetings, and I also wanted to bring CCL to my school. I tried to start a CCL club a couple years ago. It kind of got merged with a green club that was more focused on sustainability because the school wanted us to stay out of politics a bit. But then this summer, or at the end of last school year, we lobbied Congress in June and heard that our New Hampshire senators really wanted to see more grass tops endorsements before putting their name on the Energy Innovation Act. So I got together with some friends from school from the Green Club, and we teamed up with some other kids from New Hampshire schools and have a group of about 6 of us that went around meeting with local state representatives on Zoom and asking for their endorsements. And we've continued throughout the school year and have gotten about 12 endorsements so far. And thank you, Mercury.
Thank you so much. Karishma, you're up next.
Hi, I'm Karishma. I'm 16 and a junior at the Loomis Chafee School in Windsor, Connecticut, and I live in Rocky Hill, Connecticut. So I've been with CCL for just over a year. I joined CCL through a club at my school that I started called Loomis Chafee Climate Action because I have been working to do environmental action my entire life. I've always been very connected with nature, but I recently, as I became more educated and older on the topic, I realized that the best way to create action was through concrete political advocacy. And so that's why I got connected with CCL. So I joined the Hartford chapter in Connecticut and participated in the Connecticut Lobby Days recently. And I've also been working with them on our Hartford Climate Emergency Declaration. And through that work and with the help of my mentors from that chapter, I took the project to a more personal level in my town of Rocky Hill, and have been working with the mayor and city council members to get a climate emergency declaration in our town. And additionally, I've been working with my school and with students in my area to get other teenagers involved in climate advocacy, as this is a huge topic for a lot of people of my generation. And I feel very lucky to be able to get involved through CCL and help others do the same.
Thank you so much, Karishma. Finally, I'll introduce myself a little bit. Hi, my name is Mercury. I use he, they pronouns. I am based in Brooklyn, New York, but go to school at the Calhoun School in the Upper West Side, where I'm a senior. I didn't apply to college this year because I'm not quite ready for that. So same as Kathryn, don't know where I'm headed, but it won't be soon. It is wonderful to see all your beautiful faces on a call, and I'm excited to speak with you guys a bit more. I, much like Karishma, have been doing stuff related to climate action for almost my entire life and have been pretty aware of sustainability for a very long time. I have been the president I was the president of the sustainability club when I was in middle school, and have kind of taken a step back within my school and have worked more outside of my school. I've been with Extinction Rebellion Youth here in New York City for over a year and have been the New York City and Long Island regional field organizer for the New York Youth Climate Leaders, which is a statewide, a New York statewide policy organization that focuses on lobbying and kind of the policy side of climate action, while Extinction Rebellion focuses more on actions other than policy that aren't quite so focused on policy. So more protests and more kind of flashy events and bringing awareness to civilians around us rather than directly talking to politicians, which are both incredible different ways of going about things that I think both need to happen, and they need to happen hand in hand, because if you don't educate the general public, there's nobody to yell at the lawmakers about what they're doing. So that's the little blurb. I'm very excited to be here. I know this is going to be structured very much around your questions and trying to answer any questions you guys have and trying to share as much as we can with you guys, though I know we have some questions lined up already. Bruce, if you want to hit us with the first one.
Okay, so I just wanted to say, I'm Bruce, by the way. I'm a lot older, and I use any pronouns people want to use on me. And I just wanted to say that the way that Mercury got involved in this was through Liam Smith, whom some of you may know. I've lobbied with Liam. He's another one who got involved when he was in 7th or 8th grade in CCL. And he is also a member of New York Youth Climate Leaders, which has been doing fantastic work. So that's just the connection there. So the first question you've addressed somewhat, but if anybody wants to elaborate more on either what your favorite climate event was in the last year, or what you think your biggest climate success was, please do, and then we'll move on to related questions.
I can lead into that with, as I shared in my blurb, my first introduction and my most memorable and favorite introduction to CCL was those 3 November lobbying days in Washington, D.C. It was my very first time heading down to D.C. We drove together as almost a family. I had never met anyone before, but we immediately bonded, and it was absolutely phenomenal. It was rejuvenating. It was empowering. It was something where I immediately knew that it was going to be a core memory that was formative in how I wanted to proceed forward, not only with CCL, but on the greater scale of my life. Because having been introduced to DC as a city itself, the hustle, the bustle, the feeling of a charged up city, all determined to do something, that definitely dictates where I want to go later in my life and how I want to be involved with the city itself and continuing to march forward for social justice. So I would say that was my absolute favorite and most memorable CCL experience that really hooked me in and has now kept me here.
Any others?
My climate success story happened this past summer in June. I was meeting with my state senator, Senator Feingold, and this was the last day. It was like the deadline that a climate bill, it was a carbon tax actually, that had to be pushed out of committee, and he sat on the committee. And we were meeting with him, and the meeting itself was okay. We didn't have a clear answer, and it was pretty small. But so we left the meeting kind of feeling a little down. But later the day, Senator Feingold emailed us and was like, I officially support, and he didn't before our meeting. So it was really cool just seeing the impact of meeting with him and how far arguments went.
Anyone else on that topic?
I completely agree with Danielle about the DC conference and lobby days being like definitely some of my favorite times of the year. And I guess for my biggest success story of the past year my group had been collecting a lot of endorsements from Democrats, and we wanted to show bipartisan support. So I started just calling Republicans because they hadn't been as responsive to our emails. And one of them was like, "Oh, is carbon fee and dividend like carbon dividends?" And the guy had actually like campaigned off of that bill, the Baker-Schultz plan, and it's basically the same as carbon fee and dividend. So he was happy to endorse it, and that was really exciting. And it just kind of showed me that you just have to keep trying things and something will stick.
Yeah, I'd unlike the whole just pushing to get through, I totally agree with that. Last Earth Day, which I cannot believe is almost a year. It is almost a year has passed since then. This quarantine has made my sense of time completely non-existent. So it's weird to think that that almost is a year ago as we're starting to plan upcoming Earth Week stuff. But last year, New York Youth Climate Leaders, we did a big lobby day on one of the days of Earth Week, and we're lobbying for the Fossil Fuel Divestment Act, which got passed. And that was just so wonderful that that did well. And all that hard work had pushed off because we had been working with other groups that were lobbying and had done so much lobbying and had more meetings than I could possibly count on that day. And it went so well. And that was really relieving because we spent so much time ahead of time emailing with legislators and trying to get meetings set up. And it just all finally came together, and it took us a very long time. But I think that was very much a big turning point for me in my policy work, since I had been focused so much on actions such as planning protests, that doing something lobbying and having it actually pay off and seeing concrete positive results was really something that just pushed me forward, because it felt like what we're doing actually matters and it actually makes a change. And here's the proof, like here's the actual concrete change that was made because of us. And that was just a really beautiful experience. And I think something that happens to every activist at some point. You have the one moment where you realize that what you're doing is actually making a difference. And that's a very wonderful feeling.
Wonderful, thank you all. And anybody want to say any more about particular action? Otherwise, I'll move on to the next question, which is, what is your biggest frustration as a high school climate activist?
I can comment on that. So I recently, like I mentioned, have been working on getting my town of Rocky Hill to declare a climate emergency. And so with that, I have been just going to different organizations and different businesses asking for their endorsements and letters of recommendation to add to my presentation. And with that, I think as a high schooler and as a teenager, I think there's an upside and a downside to that when it comes to talking to other adults about climate action. The upside is that you sometimes aren't dismissed as immediately, but you also aren't taken as seriously, I've found. I think as climate change has become a more central issue to our generation, and as a generation, as we've become more vocal about it, I think we've been taken more seriously. But especially at the beginning of my work, I definitely noticed that I was dismissed discredited pretty easily as a 16-year-old activist.
Yeah, that's been a really big one, is just trying to be taken seriously is so difficult. And I think that's something I tend to struggle a lot to explain to older activists who don't face that struggle, or activists who only started really getting involved once they were already adults. So they never went through this period of time where they were just too young to really know what they're talking about. And that's always been such a big struggle, is trying to explain that we really do know what's going on, because this is our future we're talking about. And a lot of us are like scared that maybe we can't even have kids, because what if we don't want to bring kids into a universe that's just falling apart. And there's so many problems that we're trying to fix because we want to have futures that look bright, but it's difficult when we're trying to do this in a world where people think we don't know what we're talking about, or that we aren't actually educated on the subject, and that we're just, the big one is a lot of people assume that the only information I know about climate is from the internet or just from like social media, when in reality, I've read a bunch of books and I've read a bunch of studies on climate change, and have actually read about how the legislature works and how the actual procedures within the government work and what we actually need to address. And this is more a request for all the adults on here: help give youth a voice, because if we have an adult to help us have a voice, we are listened to more. I've noticed that lobby meetings that I'm on where we have one adult with us, I am listened to a lot more than meetings where I have no adult there supporting me. So you don't need to be fully knowledgeable. You don't need to know more than the youth. Understand that youth have a lot to teach you, and we have a lot to learn from you. And that this is a relationship that goes both ways. And we're here to help you as long as you're here to help us. And we really do need your help. So yeah.
Thank you, Mercury. This is making me think of a quote. I have actually all we can say like right here because I was reading it. And one of the first pieces is by D.A. Bastida. I could be pronouncing her name wrong.
She's a good friend of mine, actually, here in the city.
Thank you, Mercury. Anyways, there's a quote in it that's like, you don't have to know the details of the science to be part of the solution. And I just made me think of that, because you don't have to know everything to be considered like an advocate for climate change. And that's something that I've learned. I've been really lucky to be in spaces where my voice is heard. And that's definitely a privilege that I have. Another frustration that I have is that like there are 24 hours in a day, and there's also like school and a bunch of other commitments that I also have the privilege of doing. So making sure that I balance my time well is something that I've learned is also a frustration.
Excellent. Next. That was really, this is great. Just keep on going.
I would share that one of my frustrations is definitely the miseducation of my own peers, because I think that there is a belief that this generation knows it all and has the capacity immediately to educate themselves on climate change and be better. But I think there's a lot of miseducation still rampant in our generation. And I think that especially that miseducation is what then breeds the miseducation for the generations that come after us. And to share an anecdote as what I'm particularly referring to in my mind is, as a Mainer, it gets about chilly in late October. So my classmates and I were sitting outside eating lunch, and one of my peers mentioned, how could there possibly be global warming if it's so cold right now? And it was one of those moments where I was absolutely baffled, and I couldn't help but think, you're supposed to be the change. Our generation is supposed to be the change that allows us to push forward. And I think that has been one of my biggest frustrations and almost setbacks, with the idea that if there's so much rampant miseducation still in our generation, how can we continue to move forward in a positive manner? Yet I still pursue forward, understanding that there always is that turning point that can come regarding education. And those peers, perhaps 10 years from now, will be the biggest climate activists in their community. Or perhaps not, and understanding that nonetheless, the positive change that is being put out by our generation will always outweigh any negative setbacks stemming from miseducation.
Bruce, this is Rob. I just wanted to interject briefly. We do have a hand raised. I'm wondering if people who have questions could put them into the chat. I know that you've already collected a lot of questions, so we may not be able to get to them all, but at least we can see the questions there in the chat. Thanks.
It's fine, thank you. There are questions in the chat, and I'm seeing what I can do to pull out questions or responses without going
Right.
off topic.
You're not going to be taking verbal questions, is that
I'm not
correct?
taking verbal questions,
Yes.
no. Just to mention that one person put in the chat, and we're finding this, we older CCL activists are finding that members of Congress want young people in sessions. We find that it's very effective. So just that you know, we are getting feedback that way around the country. The other is that somebody put in the chat, boy, you can really teach us something about time management. So feel free to continue to talk about that, you busy people. Who's next on this topic?
I guess I can say I've been lucky. I haven't really been like ignored or something. I think my age has kind of been an advantage because like some people, like if I email them and say like, can you meet with some high schoolers about climate change? Like they're generally pretty receptive, and I've compared my results doing the same things to my dad, and I've definitely had better luck just being lucky because of my age. And I guess my biggest frustration is it doesn't really have to do with like being a high schooler, but I just like it's like when politicians are like factoring in politics and like getting reelected as opposed to like what's really best to do. So yeah, I think that's a lot of you all have that too.
Next, who hasn't spoken on biggest frustration?
I've spoken already, but Kathryn mentioning just re-elections as a thing, it is so frustrating to not be able to vote. You know, like there's just so much, and like you just got to push through. And sometimes I've received people asking me why I care so much about elections when I can't vote, like why I care so much about educating myself on all the candidates. Even now, there's the seat for mayor is up for re-election here in New York City, and I've been reading up on all the candidates. I've been looking at all their platforms and just trying to get fully informed. And even though I can't vote, I still want to know what's going on and want to make sure I can educate those around me who can vote. Which is why, again, it's really important to listen to the people who are younger than you, because when it comes to stuff like elections, we don't have a voice. The only voice we have is when you listen to us, because we can't make our voice heard on a physical like ballot. And so the only way we can do that is by sharing what we've learned and what we've thought about the election with you all, and trying to convince you of our points and share with you why we think certain candidates are so important.
Okay. A question that comes up all the time at CCL meetings and other activist meetings is, what's been your experience working in climate actions with other climate groups? What are the advantages, and what have you found are the complications, and how have you or your group dealt with those questions? So alliances, coalitions, that's the question.
I would say my most recent project actually was combining the intersection between mental health and climate change. With climate change being exacerbated comes more seasonal depression, comes other intersections such as lower income persons having a harder time coping with it and thus leading to worse mental health. So I am a youth outreach director for the Yellow Tulip Project, which is a youth organization focused on normalizing conversations around mental health. And just recently, we have been reaching out to climate organizations to combine our messages. And with that, I think one of the biggest things that I like to grasp and grapple with is the idea of intersectionality. It doesn't have to always be climate change organization and climate change organization. It can be mental health organization, climate change organization, or immigration reform organization mixed with climate change. And I think that understanding helps to create so many more coalitions, and that's really resulting in many positive experiences under my belt of sharing the intersections between different organizations that I'm involved with that might not even suspect an intersection into climate change.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing point, Danielle. I at my school, actually, we have a lot of different organizations on a school level that then branch out to like greater organizations surrounding that topic. And so I go to a boarding school, so there are people from all over the world that have so many different ideas. And so I lead a climate organization at my school that does like political advocacy. And we've actually had so many different collaborations with other groups on campus. And like Danielle said, that intersectionality, especially among younger climate advocates, I found who are passionate about like several different topics, I think has been so rewarding to see all those different kinds of topics combined.
This is separate, and I know that we're answering one question, but I just saw one in the chat that really spoke to me that I want to answer really quickly. It's about like gender discrepancies in climate activism, and that a lot of the faces we see a lot are girls. I do want to point out I'm a trans guy. I'm not a girl, but it is certainly a very feminine space in a lot of places, though. For example, New York Youth Climate Leaders, our leadership team, which is about 10 people, has about 4 guys on it, so we are pretty close to being evenly split up there. And I know at XR, for example, there's a lot of guys as well, so very frequently we see a lot of girls at the forefront, and I see a lot of girls speaking, which I think is really wonderful, because in so many other areas girls are kind of pushed down and aren't given a space. And I think in climate activism, it's a space that girls have kind of taken for themselves and kind of intentionally placed themselves at the forefront, which is really wonderful, because it takes a lot of courage to stand up to just this little box that society puts people in, and to have women be intentionally putting themselves in charge and putting themselves in those positions instead of waiting for somebody else to give them that platform is really wonderful. But there are certainly a lot of guys my age, our age in general, that are involved. They're just oftentimes harder to find at the forefront. But I mean, as Bruce mentioned, I got involved here because Bruce got involved with Liam, who I work with very closely, and he suggested me to be on here. It's a really good question, though, and it's one I think about a lot as a trans person who thinks about gender and its relation to everything in our society. So thank you for that one.
Other comments about coalitions and working with other groups, or anything you want? I mean, I have a whole series of questions. We obviously won't get through all of them. So I wanted to ask, just briefly, can you remember and describe the moment when you realized that you had to become a climate activist?
So I guess I can start. For me, so my mom is from a farming village in rural India, and my dad is from the Caribbean, the island of St. Martin. So I grew up like completely immersed in nature, and always outside, always like in the environment. And with that like feeling of connection with the planet came this responsibility I felt to protect it and to always advocate for the environment. And so when I was younger, that took the form of encouraging my school to take on recycling initiatives and stuff like that. But as I got older, I realized that climate advocacy on a more political level was what was really going to mitigate the climate crisis. So I would say that my freshman year of high school, I was doing some research, and I came across this organization at my school that I connected with some people there, and that's when I really realized that like political advocacy was what I wanted to pursue.
I stumbled upon advocacy kind of accidentally. I had been involved in my middle school's like green team, and on a whim went to like a community action day event in Boston. That was it was hosted by my local Fridays for Future chapter, and I didn't really know what to expect. I kind of just went for fun. But slowly after that, I got immersed and I was like, oh wait, this is advocacy. So it was kind of accidental. I didn't entirely purposely go into it, but learned a lot and decided to stay in it.
I would
That's
say
awesome. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Daniel.
Sorry. I would say I shared a similar experience to Karishma because both of my parents are Jamaican immigrants. So I was always super intertwined with the idea of what it means to be one with nature, to really love the environment around you. And I would say I definitely came pretty late to the game to climate advocacy. I, for a couple years, had this belief that I had to be the master of one trade as opposed to the jack of all. And I was really passionate about a multitude of issues. So I immediately at first decided that I was just going to pick one and stick with it. So that one had been not climate advocacy, but immigration reform. And I spent years really educating myself until, as I mentioned earlier in a previous response, I finally grasped the concept of intersectionality and understanding that there can be climate refugees and whatnot. So with that, as I began to mix my passions for other social justice issues, I really understood the idea that I can also be a climate activist. And also, none of my other works will matter if we don't have a planet to live on that's inhabitable. So with that understanding of not only intersectionality, but how core climate change work was what kind of led me down the path, and also CCL specifically, because I was always looking for a little bit more than just climate change advocacy, but climate justice, which is the understanding that marginalized people are going to be the ones facing the brunt of climate change, not people who can afford to buy canned air when we might need it.
That's great, Danielle. I definitely started going to CCL things just because my dad was, so like why not? But I guess that moment came for me when I like really understand the carbon fee and dividend and important it is. Because and then I just decided like I need to do everything I can to help it. And CCL was really good about like saying that like anyone can help and teaching me.
So I just want to put in a very quick plug for All We Can Save, whether you go to the workshop on that or not. All We Can Save is so related to what this panel is about. You will find it invaluable in your work, in your personal life. I don't mean panelists, I mean everybody who's on this call. You will find it is just, it touches so many areas, both emotional and intellectual. It's a very important book. Would you talk, any of you talk about what you find, the way that you find you can present the EICDA or general carbon pricing, however you want to put it, to others? What works for you? What's been your experience in talking to individuals or talking to in lobby groups? What seems to be to you an effective way of bringing that legislation?
I think CCL's recommendation works really well. Just like hit the highlights, like it's effective in reducing emissions. It'll reduce emissions by 40% in 12 years, 90% in 30. It's like good for people, good for the economy. Just give the statistics about like jobs created and lives saved.
Yeah, I would completely agree. I think that's a great method. And one other thing that I find when I'm talking to specific people, for example, if I'm talking to not a politician, but a specific group. I try to like talk about what appeals would be best for that group. So if I'm talking to a more social justice oriented group, I might talk about how the act supports lower wage earning Americans while still fighting for climate justice.
Last couple of comments, because I realize we are going to run out of time. I am the timekeeper. So anybody else want to address what have you found effective, if anything different from what people have said in addressing individuals or in lobbying sessions on the EICDA or carbon pricing in general? In 1 minute, we really do need to stop. If there's any last comment you want to make quickly, you have to make it quickly because we've done a great job, but we are out of time. So anybody want to have a last word? Well, my last word is you did kick ass, so thank you very much.
Oh.
And this was an inspiration and also gives a lot to think about. Everybody, please remember that you can save the chat and that there are all kinds of questions and comments in there that you will find very valuable. And we're going to turn this back. Oh, well.
I really quickly.
Right.
For anyone based in New York State, I would love to connect with anyone. I'm gonna drop my email and my Instagram handle both in the chat, and I'd love to hear from any and all of you. Even if you're not based in New York State and you want to connect over something, I would love to talk. But I'm always looking for New York State people since I work on the leadership team of a New York State organization. It was wonderful, wonderful, wonderful to speak here with these wonderful panelists and like get to hear their opinions and get to see how we overlap. I'd like to pass it over to Kathryn, who's going to talk us through quick action.
And good luck in your race, Kathryn.
Thanks, Bruce. And thank you, Mercury. So now we're just going to take a quick action, and everyone, you can do this on your phone or a computer. All you need is a browser. We're going to send an email to Congress asking them to co-sponsor the Energy Innovation Act or some sort of carbon fee and dividend legislation when it's reintroduced in Congress. So if you click on this link, send it one more time, it should give you a form, and if you haven't done it before, you'll need to fill out like your address and stuff like that so it gets you to the right congressman, and then it'll give you a sample and you can send it as is or edit it if you'd like. And thank you. We should have an impact in Congress because they supposedly pay attention to an issue with 8 or so contacts about the same topic within a day.
Link.
Maybe just
Okay. All right, am I spotlighted again? Are we done?
Thank you for having us.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. That was absolutely phenomenal. You are such an inspiration, my gosh. I feel so good. We can all go home now, I think. But okay, so next, what we're going to do is, and thanks, and also thanks for Kathryn for the thing, but all of you panelists are just amazing. So one of the things we're going to do, what CCL loves, is we're all about relationships and connections. So we're setting up a short breakout session with all of us. So it's going to be random, And Devin, are you setting up these sessions?
Yep, I'm ready to go when you are, Iona.
Ready to go. Okay, so we're going to ask just, and how large are they?
It'll
What
be
is-
about 4 or 5 people per room.
Okay, cool. So you'll have 8 minutes, and we're asking you to quickly introduce yourselves to each other, but really quickly, and talk about one point or comment that stood out for you in the high school panel. So that's it, and you will wind up back here after 8 minutes. So off you go.
All right. You've all been invited to join. Please accept.
Hi, Devin.
Hi, Rob.
So I think the folks here are either stepped away or don't
Yeah.
want to do a breakout. But I guess if people here would like to be added in, I guess ask them to put in the chat that they'd like to be added to a breakout. Everyone, you're all muted due to the large number of attendees. If you want to join a breakout, let me know in the chat. We'll send you over.
Rob, do you know how to send people to breakout?
I think so. If you go in breakouts, it'll show who's unassigned.
I have
Some
0 unassigned right now.
Yeah, I guess these people are assigned, but we could actually just push them to the rooms, I think, if they say they want to be. I think. You see the people that are in rooms but actually haven't moved
Yeah.
there.
I see that people are in the rooms, but they say not join. So they've been assigned to a room, but they didn't join the room.
Right. So I know David, I could just move him to a room even though he didn't want to be. Maybe I won't do that.
I can try moving people who have not joined to other rooms in case maybe they missed the.
Right.
But I won't do that unless you guys put it in the chat.
Yeah, I think we should. In case you missed that, folks, if you want to be in a chat, in a breakout, but you're not, if you could tell us in the chat, and we will hopefully be able to guide you over to that room.
We'll try our best. That was very inspiring.
Wasn't that terrific?
Oh, what a great bunch.
Uh-huh.
It was amazing.
I mean, it's a hard task to ask kids to do, but they are powerful. So,
they don't really see themselves as kids, do they?
No, they're obviously quite mature. Way more mature than I was at 17.
I feel like that's why so many more young women are in climate action than young men. in my experience, we mature much earlier.
Yeah, I would say that's probably true.
It's been written about quite a bit, and
Yeah.
it's somewhat universal.
Mm. It's cultural also.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So Michael, were you able to find the final slide number 2?
Yes, I was looking in the wrong place, but yes, they're all together. So
Yep.
so that's fine.
Hi, Linda Weinstein. You are watching the planning committee. You're on mute, so you can't say anything, but you can chat if you like. I guess we could unmute you if you want to say something.
Yes.
Oh, thanks for the timekeeping, Devin. I forgot.
Mm-hmm. Oh, did you see that message?
I'm sorry.
Did you see that message?
I did, yes. It was a little pop-up.
But you're not in a breakout room.
I know. That's something I just learned. Oh, there's Stan Franzini. Hi, Stan.
I'm all like fired up now too. I want to go do more.
Good. So you know to end the session a minute before we actually want it to end.
Yes, I will close it in 8 seconds.
All right. And Michael, I don't know if you saw, but this is actually something new. We're going to unmute everybody at the very, very end.
Okay.
So we can all just say goodbye or hello.
Very good.
You know how to do that, Michael? How to give everybody access to unmute themselves? Or we can unmute everybody.
Well, I have asked all to unmute or allow them to unmute themselves. I can do that, certainly.
I think maybe do both.
Yeah. Okay, so shall I do that now or when?
No, Iona will tell you at the end.
Yes.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back.
Bye.
All right. Looks like everybody's coming back now.
Okay, welcome back. So we're going to wrap up this section with another look at what CCLers have been up to this year and send you off to a new Zoom line for Mark Reynolds, Kathryn Hayhoe, and Danny Richter. So Devin, can you show us that final video, please?
Your job is to build trust with patience and understanding.
Of course, the climate's changing.
I support the Energy Innovation Act.
It is a bipartisan, common sense approach to solving this problem.
Fighting climate change is a lot like physical training. You just have to build up for it.
Congress has made steps in the right direction. But there is so much more we need to do, and we need your help to move forward.
Excellent. Okay, so could everybody please unmute yourselves and wave each other goodbye.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. We'll be back.
The other side.
Great panel.
Kathryn Gage.
Thanks, Iona.
Take care.